All right, so big week for the Jets, right? Just like that, the Jets now have a new head coach and a new GM, and that's what this video is going to be all about. So where do we start? We start with Aaron Glenn. I think it's a really good move bringing this guy in as the head coach. He is a former player, but not only is he a former player, he is a former Jet player who wants to be with this organization and this team and with these fans. He is Jets through and through, and you have to love that. He bleeds green, this guy, and you got to love that about just that alone. You got to love. Now, what else do you have to love about this guy? You got to love the fact that he's a former player, which to me is a perk. It's a serious perk because he will be able, he was a player, so he will be able to relate to the players from a player standpoint. That is huge. That's bigger than what I think a lot of people realize to have in his back pocket. On top of that, he's super competitive. He was a great player, so he's very competitive. He wants to win, but he wants to win as a Jet. He wants the Jets to win, and you got to love that. I remember when they drafted him, and he was good. He was a very good cornerback, probably the best cornerback the team had up until they got Revis. He was definitely he was a Pro Bowler. And in his honor, I'm wearing the old throwback jersey. I had to go dig it out. Yes, it is the Darnold jersey. And that whole situation is still kind of up in the air and a little crazy. Maybe we'll do another video about that. I mean, would you still take him if he becomes available at this point? We'll make another video about that. But Aaron Glenn, I think you got to be psyched about this move because, you know, like I said, he is a former Jet player and he is all Jets. Like, this guy loves the Jets. He loves the organization, and this is the job that he wanted. Now, if you didn't catch the press conference, which was earlier today, it was great. So if you didn't catch it, definitely, I'm sure at this point, you probably saw the clip where he addresses the players, the current players on the team, and it was great. He was just balls out, no nonsense, man. He was just like, be prepared, and he's like, we're the freaking Jets, and he was cursing. I loved it. So you got to just love the components of this. So great player who then decides to turn his attention to coaching. And again, if you didn't see the press conference, I really suggest you watch it because it was really good. But he shared some really good stories. And he talks about like some of the people who were really influential in his career, in his path, especially his coaching path. And one of those people is Parcells, who I always thought was definitely one of the greatest coaches of all time. And he says the same thing about Parcells. And he shares a story where he talks to Parcells and he tells Parcells, look, I want to coach now. And Parcells says, well, you're not going to coach. You're going to go scout. And he was like, I don't want to scout. I want to coach. And Parcells just broke it down to him that this is where you're going to start. You're going to start as a scout. And then Glenn goes on to talk about how, even though at the time he wasn't crazy about the idea, it turned out to be one of the greatest things he ever did for his coaching path. And that's the wisdom and brilliance of Parcells. So he starts out as a scout for the Jets, no less, right? And then he moves his way through the league, consistently getting promoted, climbing up the ladder, until he finally gets to where he was last year, which was the defensive coordinator of the Lions. We all know the Lions story, right? Tremendous turnaround for that organization. But then you kind of just knew, at least I had the sense that he was going to come to the Jets. It was just like, because he's a former Jet. it just all kind of made sense to me that he was going to wind up as the head coach. But what I love, again, from the press conference, he really hammered it home that this was the job that he wanted. He said it was. He said it was. There was never really any interest in any of the other jobs that he was interviewing for. This was the job he wanted. So, and it's because of the whole history, and you just know how much this organization means to this guy. He knows the organization. He knows the fan base. He knows the city. It's just a really good fit, in my opinion. And after hearing him talk, I never really heard him talk, like, from a coaching standpoint, you know? And I just loved what I heard. I loved his demeanor. I loved everything about what I saw today in that press conference with him. He looks like he is no nonsense, and he does look like he will be able to take control of the reins for this team. And you know he wants to win a bowl just as much as a Jet player wants to win a bowl. He wants to win a bowl, but not just win a bowl. He wants to win a bowl with the Jets. So, and he even talked about that as well. He talked about the 98 AFC Conference Championship game against Denver, which I remember clearly as well. So when he was talking about that story, when they were up 10-0 at halftime, and then that really freaky, fluky kickoff after the half, that really turned the game around, and they wound up losing the game. Like, I remember that vividly. So, but he went on to say how he's here to avenge that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he that never left him, that they were this close from going to the bowl that year. In that game, they were this close to getting to the bowl that year. So, like I'm saying, you just have to be psyched about this move. I think it's a really good move. I really do. It just feels right to me. I was worried about, who they're going to get for a head coach and who they're going to get for a GM. And I'll talk about the GM in a second. But I was just like, I don't know who the fuck this team's going to get, And then, like I said, I did have like a sense that he was going to wind up as the Jet coach. But it wasn't until like he actually got hired. And it's like, we hired one of our own. Like I just love the fact that he is a former Jet player. And I just think that's huge. I really do. Now, there's just one thing. And it's, in my opinion, after hearing him talk today and his whole history with the Jets, it's not even that big of a deal to me anymore. It used to be a bigger deal to me to think about this. I mean, I actually think that what I'm about to say does have a lot of relevance and legitimacy to it, but, it's his first time being a head coach. He's a coordinator transitioning to head coach. And that's not an easy transition. So that's the only thing where before they hired him, I was like, that's the only thing I would be worried about if they hired him as the head coach. But again, I got to tell you, after watching the press conference and listening to him talk and just listening to his path and what he has done to get to this point from a coaching standpoint, and just listening and reading what others have said at this point about him as a coach, there's a lot of talk that he is all about all aspects of the team and the game, and that is what a head coach needs to be. And again, after listening to him talk, you got that sense that this guy just might be the guy to really turn this organization around. And who better than a former Jet player, right? So it's like a fairy tale almost. So, but all in all, I think it's a really good move. I think it's the move that was really the only move here. I really do. And I just got a good vibe. I got a good vibe about this. And it's funny because just like a week or two ago, I was so down on this team and the season. And I was just like, I don't even want to make these fucking videos for this team anymore because, it was that bad of a season. And just the whole getting rid of the head coach and GM, and then it was like, oh man, here we go again. We got to start all this shit over again. And how many times have we done that to where we just waste another 3 or 4 years, and then it's the same shit over and over. But I actually think there might be something different here. There might be something different about this hire and this direction. So I'm actually now psyched again for next season, which I just didn't think I was going to be honest with you, because I really want to see how this guy handles the team and what kind of and I want to see what type of a team this guy puts on the field, because I'm telling you right now, I just got a good vibe about it. I think this guy is going to put a really good competitive team on the field, and I think the players are going to love this guy because again, it seems like he's got a great personality, but he's got that inside track. You know what I mean? He's got like that inside layer of being a former player himself, and to boot, he's a former Jet player. He's an original Jet player. It's not like he was on another team and came to the Jets. He's an original pick of the Jets. So you just put it all together, and I think you got some good stuff in the makings here. Now, let's talk about the GM. It's funny, right? They hired the head coach first, then the GM. That goes to show you that they just wanted Glenn. So, and that they knew they wanted Glenn, I think anyway, right? So they hire Glenn, and then just a couple of days later, they hire the GM. Now, I didn't really know anything about this guy, and I still don't know too much about this guy, but again, I watched the press conference, and I did a little research on him, and I just listened to him. And I'm glad I did, because I was gonna pronounce his name as Mougey, but apparently it's Mougey. So Darren Mougey, right? From Denver. And young guy, 39 years old. But apparently he has a very good path as well, as far as scouting talent and going through a lot of different types of transitions with Denver. And he also has a little bit of history with Glenn as well. He speaks of the story in the press conference where Glenn, I believe, went to interview for the head coaching position a couple of years ago in Denver, and that's where they met. So they have a brief history as well, and apparently there was chemistry there on that interview. And everything you heard from this press conference and from what these guys were saying and from what other people were saying, everything you heard was good stuff. It was that both Glenn and Mougey have the same vision. They're on the same page. They seem to really embrace each other and each other's role in the organization. So it feels like maybe it really was the right move to get rid of Saleh and Douglas and just start all over again, because these two guys, it just feels good. It just feels good to me. And I got to tell you, I was very apprehensive about the idea of getting rid of the coach, getting rid of the GM, and then starting that process all over again. I'm telling you, man, I was like, how many times have we done it? But this feels good to me. This feels as good as it could possibly feel, considering the season we just had and everything that happened in the season with the firings and everything, and having to get a new coach and a new GM, and with all of that, this actually feels pretty good to me. So again, it's like now I'm actually legitimately and genuinely psyched for next season. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what these guys can do. And believe me when I tell you, I'm not being delusional here. Because if I felt like it was a bad hire or if there was something I didn't like, trust me, I would be sitting here telling you that. So it feels good to me. This feels like a good hire of both head coach and GM. And maybe Johnson might have gotten it right this time. So, and you got to credit Woody, you know, even though a lot of times it's like, maybe he should sell the team because this fucking guy doesn't know anything about football and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you hear that a lot, right? But give the guy some credit because he really does seem to love the team, and he really does seem like he genuinely wants to bring a championship home with this team. So, I think he's doing the best he can as an owner, and he is very committed to this team, and you got to give him some credit for that. So I think good job all around here, and like I said, we got a brand new slate to start with coming up for the 25 season, and I think it'll be good. It'll start with the draft. We'll see how these guys operate in the draft. We're going to see what they do with Rodgers. We're going to see, you know what I'm saying? We're going to see what they do about the quarterback situation. All of that. And you got to love that too. Glenn addressed that before he even took questions in the press conference. He was like, let me just nip it in the bud right here. And he addressed the Rodgers situation. So right there, you got to love that. I was really impressed with the press conference. Like I said, it's just, to me, it's a good vibe. And we need a good vibe after this really fucked up season. You know what I'm saying? So I'm pretty psyched. I'm pretty psyched to see what happens. So that's pretty much it for this video. I obviously had to put out a video. We got a new coach. We got a new GM. It's big news. And like I said, I'm pretty psyched about it. I feel good about it. And I think it's a good hire for both coach and GM. I think it's a good situation now. Actually, you'll probably see some shit go down before the draft with these guys. I just got that vibe. I think these guys are no nonsense, and I think they are burning with a vision to bring home a championship now with this team. But not only that, they are also, I think, on the same page to change the culture. But not only just change the culture, and Glenn spoke about this as well, change the culture to a winning culture, but a sustainable winning culture. So he's taking the winning to another level to sustain it. So again, all good stuff. So we'll see what happens. I'm pretty psyched.